name is Vic Chapman, and I'm talking to Jamie-Lea Hodges about her educational journey today. Must say, Jamie, it's good to be here. I remember a time when I was more or less a lone wolf. So go back to 1952, as I was saying, there was one of us in the teaching service. In 1953, there was a 100% increase. There were two of us. And now there are lots of people like you. Thank goodness. Your reputation has gone before you via Dolly. But it's good to be here today. And it's more important, it's good that you're here. Your involvement and contribution to this teaching program today and Friday will highlight the important role of Indigenous educators, and it will inform people who prepare Indigenous students, Indigenous teachers, about the difficulties that of teaching Indigenous kids and the problems that Indigenous kids experience today. So when I became when I went on my education journey almost 68 years ago, there were no signposts. There was nobody to show the way. If they wanted to, and if there were any, they wouldn't be particularly interested in showing the way at all. But today, there's no need to feel anxious, as you say, because we're amongst our own people. So thank you again for being involved in this project. And now it's time to ask you some questions. And rather than me do the talking, it's for you to do the talking. What moments have been significant to you in your educational journey and why? For example, in both formal and informal contexts such as primary school and secondary school, at university and learning in the community.
I grew up in Coonamble and I went to Coonamble High School. Right. I went all the way through to Year 12 in Coonamble High, and growing up in that community and being at a school where you know everyone is a fantastic thing, but you also know that when teachers come out there, it's a remote school, that's high points for teachers to come, get their points so that they can move to where they would prefer to live. And for me going through school, we constantly changed teachers, always changing. They always were coming, getting their points, and then they would go. And for us, I was able to watch my peers constantly frustrated and testing each new teacher to say, you're not going to stay, so why should we behave? Yeah. And it created a distrust for everyone, for our school. And for me to be able to go through school and get to Year 12 with all different teachers through my HSC years, finally I had a teacher in Year 12 who was a first year out COFA graduate. Her name was Catherine Cavallo, and she was amazing, mostly because she was a really passionate art teacher.
Right.
And for her then to enthuse us about art and about learning and exploring this whole other world that we didn't really get to see because we always had relief teachers and they were always changing, and she was there and she was going to stay. So she played a big role in that, and then for me to then go, okay, well, if I'm ever going to do anything about this, I need to go to uni. If I want to return home, I need to go somewhere to get an education, and then be able to come back and be a teacher in a remote community, whether it was Coonamble or somewhere close by there. That meant that I was going to stay. I wasn't there just to get points and leave again. It just instilled that in me going through school there. It was.
So it's more or less the same situation as I was found myself in at Gadiga. There wasn't that continuity, and most of the itinerant people like teachers.
Yeah.
Coming into a very town of high Aboriginal concentration very quickly took on the attitudes of non-Indigenous people towards Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
And as you, I was lucky enough to have
That
that
one
one
person.
at that one particular point in time
Yeah.
who thought I had some academic promise,
Yeah.
and was instrumental in me in becoming a state bursar, and that's where the journey started.
Yeah.
So you more or less answered the second question that I was going to ask you about, who was the important person in your life.
Catherine was really influential, and at each point in your education you come across different people, I think, and she meant so much in Year 12 to me, to introduce COFA to me. I didn't know about it before then. So and then once I came to COFA, it was a whole nother story.
But that launch pad was so important.
It was very important.
Got you off the ground.
Yeah.
And continuity, that's always a problem in those sort of places.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people who are and dedicated teachers, I should say, they go out there to get their brownie points.
Yeah.
And those people sitting in front of them are not that important.
No.
Not as important as the paycheck. How important is being connected to people and community? What people, community and networks have been significant to you in your educational journey?
Being from Coonamble was really important to me, and having to leave was a big deal, but it meant that I always planned to return, not just because it's my hometown, but I knew that after uni I wanted to live in the country, and I wanted to be able to have a lifestyle where I didn't have people living on top of me and beside me and underneath me everywhere. I didn't want a lifestyle of living in the city. I wanted that experience that I'd had growing up, fishing and horse riding and all that kind of activity. That meant a lot to me, be able to return back. So
I think
I
I think we all of us have lots of similarities in our educational journey. Family is very important. It's the navigating the system is well, in my case, was almost non-existent because my mum and dad couldn't read or write, and we thought that the education system stopped at the village school. And there was nobody around to inform us otherwise, except this great champion who came along and showed us the way, this great teacher. And
I was the first person in my family to go to uni.
But
I was the first person in my family to go to university.
Well, again, there's lots of similarities. And I was the first and only one to go in the family of 15 to go past primary school. And the Pro-Vice Chancellor at Wollongong University, Paul Chandler, is also the only one in his family to go past primary school. So, but it's good that these things are starting to happen. Why did you choose to do art education?
I wanted to work in the arts.
Right.
I didn't like my chances of making a living being an artist. And I felt it was really important to be able to either be an art teacher, or once I got to COFA and realised all the different positions that were at my fingertips, it was then important for me to work out with art, what could I do? What kind of job could I do, whether it was being a classroom teacher or moving on to the role that I do now. It was something that I couldn't get away from, really. It was just there. I can't imagine my life without it.
Why is it valuable to have Aboriginal art teachers within our education system?
As you said before, there was no one before you, and if people aren't shown the possibility that that can happen and that you could return to your community, then how are you ever going to know that it is a possibility and you do have the ability to do it? When I left COFA and to do my teaching internship, I returned back to Coonamble High, and it was a really great experience to be in a classroom where I'd gone through school and then be able to teach kids and say, I went through here, I went through to year 12 here, I went and got my degree and now I'm home again. And it made quite an impact. Yeah.
So it was it was a great role model.
Yeah, it was, and it was a great experience for me as a person. So, and I know it was definitely a really good experience for my teacher, who was her first year out when I was in year 12, to still be teaching there and to return. And
in the same way, lots of my family, my nieces and nephews, went into teaching because they saw that it was possible.
Yep.
And and I think it's very important for the presence of any Indigenous person in a school. It's more important than the great tomes of paper and the policies that not too many people look at. But when they see an Indigenous person on the premises, they have something to contend with every day.
Yeah.
And it's a good. I thought it was. We are good sources of corrective history.
Yeah.
And people will say, "Oh, I didn't know that." They'll make a statement, and you're able to correct them. And it's in a sort of a kindly sort of atmosphere that correction is done.
Yeah. The other thing about having Aboriginal art teachers in the classroom is that you have the knowledge to know what is, I guess, not correct, but what they should be learning about, the rich part of their culture that they can access through the art, rather than just studying it from an outside view and saying, here's a book on Northern Territory Aboriginal art and let's study that. It's not just another race. It becomes so much more real.
And it's just another one of the tools that we've lost along the way.
It is.
In artwork and language, and I understand that language revival is going well out that way. Camilla and Euralia, and particularly. Yeah,
and when I taught at Coonamble High, my program for my internship was a lot about reintroducing the traditional marks that were local to our area, and looking at that through contemporary art. So it was wild one symbols and tree carvings, and showing the kids this history that they in Coonamble don't quite see. It's not readily available. It's very much lost. So to reintroduce that, and for them to be able to then use that to make artwork that was relevant to our community.
Yes. And I see in your program, this program here, the festival program, you've used the words we and Gali. That's the actually Euralia, it's we and Wogan, but you've used the what key issues have been most relevant to you as an alumni of COFA Art and Design Education? What key issues?
I don't know what you mean by key issues, really. I thought about this question earlier and I didn't know what it really meant. I just feel like issues are a negative thing, and I don't know that there was any issues once I left. I don't.
Yeah, maybe factor.
Yeah, key factors.
Do you have any problems, in-school problems with being Indigenous?
No.
Well,
but after my internship, I didn't teach. I already had the role at Outback Arts as a regional
right.
Indigenous.
Yeah.
So once I finished my internship, the role that I now play is much more of going into different schools constantly
right.
and facilitating workshops or programs or assisting schools to get artists in. Or
so it's a district
yeah,
trust,
I cover
rather
5
than-
local government areas.
Yeah.
Coonamble is one of those,
Right.
and I work closely with the schools in Coonamble.
Yeah.
But I also work in Warren, Cobar, Burke, Walgett.
Oh, gee, you've got
I've got quite a big job, quite a big job to get around to all different communities. So
I'm beginning to think that, well, I've learned that when people perceive that you are proficient at your job, you're good at doing it, there's inclined not to be any negative comment. So in my almost 40 years in working in schools, I experienced no racism from kids or teachers or community members.
Yeah.
And
It's always funny though when you come across someone who you start talking about Aboriginal art or Aboriginal culture and they kind of look at you a little bit weird because I'm white.
Yep.
I'm white as they
and
come.
That's a great deal. That
And
presents a great problem with.
It means that people really question you, and you've sort of got to give a big biography about your family to say, well, actually, you know, I am Aboriginal.
Yeah.
You know, I have photos of my family. They are very dark.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing when you have that conversation, and that is still there. That people still think, oh, just because you're white, that you know that you may not be Aboriginal. But
yes, no, people have mistaken me for other ethnic groups as well, and they're quite surprised when I say that I'm Aboriginal, and that comment also comes about when people make disparaging comments about Aboriginal people, and you say, look, just a minute, I'm one of those, and they say, oh, but you're different.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that?
I have experienced that. Oh, but you're different. Yeah. It's a weird concept for anyone to think that anyone's different to start with.
How has your view of who and what is important in becoming a professional person changed over time?
I thought that when I was going to become an art teacher that I would be this professional person that would have all this knowledge. I would go to university and learn all this information, and I would be able to give that to students and teach that to them. But as I went through uni, I realised that you're not teaching at people. You don't have to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
It's not that's not the process, and that doesn't make a good teacher either. It was more to me that it changed so that I was able to go into an art teaching role or an arts worker role and be able to help others to learn more about art. It wasn't just my expertise and blurting that information out to them. It was much more about helping them to learn.
So what changes have you seen or experienced for Indigenous Australians in relation to education?
Recently, quite a lot. Our schools at home are connected community schools now.
Right.
Which is really interesting for our community because there's much more involvement from local people to have a say in what's taught at the school and how it's taught, advising the school now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming a much stronger role.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that's been my perception too. When the Aboriginal Education Studies and Aboriginal Education Policy was floated. I think teachers in the school that I worked in anyway, and I think in a lot of schools, were anxious to be involved in the process, but they didn't know how to proceed. When the Aboriginal community was approached, they were hesitant to be involved because of their negative experiences in the school situation.
Yeah.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, that clause which in that regulation, the teacher's handbook that principals used, we had two handbooks, one about personnel and one about property. And the one about personnel that says that a person of Aboriginal descent could be barred from the public school system on the protest of one white member of the community. And that was only removed from the teacher's handbook in 1972. Not so long ago.
Not so long ago.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we're certainly taking off as a people as far as education is concerned. And what do you see? What role? How important is that role of education in participation, and how we participate as a people participate in the running of this place, in the running of Australia?
It's extremely important.
Extremely important.
Yeah.
I think it's our salvation.
Yeah.
Rescuing us from the hole into which we've been pushed or
reclaiming.
In which we've fallen. And already we're seeing our people appearing in places they haven't appeared in before. Check out chicks, and one of my rallies is my niece's boy is the pharmacist at Warren. My two boys, who unfortunately are both deceased, one was both graduates of this university, one was a surveyor and one had a background in law. And in my welcomes to country at Wollonga in Wollongong, Aboriginal people are represented right across the faculties. So it's exciting.
It is exciting.
And exciting for me sitting here today and seeing what great talent, like you and all the other people that I've met today. It's really, really exciting for me. Quite emotional, actually.
Yeah, it is emotional. When I started in my role at Outback Arts, there was only a few of us working there.
Yeah.
And we now have an Indigenous Cultural Development Officer program, so we have 6 RICDOs.
Right.
And out of all of the staff of Outback Arts now, there's only 2 people that are non-Aboriginal.
Right.
And we only worked that out a couple of days ago and went, hang on a second, isn't that exciting? There's these arts workers, they're just multiplying now.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, no, it's great times that we're living in. And, what is the best way? We probably have already answered this question. What is the best way to assist Indigenous and non-Indigenous students to achieve as you have done at this university and in their chosen careers? What is the best way to assist Indigenous and non-Indigenous students?
I think we're all doing that. I think we're all doing our part of going out there, doing what we really want to do, and being able to share that with others. Like people aren't going to know that that's possible unless someone else is doing it. So, thank you for doing that, trailblazer.
I tell you, for me, it's been a roller coaster ride, and I've enjoyed the ride.
That's great.
Not only Indigenous people have sort of egged me on, but non-Indigenous people as well. So there are a lot of good folk out there. One of the greatest things I think that's ever happened to Australia was the immigration program, and where perhaps for the first time Australians appreciated people who looked different, people who spoke differently, people who had different customs, and it's influenced our lives, every aspect of our lives, how we dress, our vocabulary, what we eat, what we drink, and how we perceive each other. It's helped the Aboriginal program, I think, a lot. And have you got any other comments to add to what you've already said?
I know.
I'm sure you've had a wide experience.
Yeah.
And your reputation has gone before you.
Yeah.
Dolly has told me what you've done.
It's I feel like I watched a movie for a little while. It all happened so quickly now.
Yeah.
There's a moment, though, in going through university, there was a moment where I was really challenged.
Right.
And it was the system of how they process the teaching internship.
Right.
And the course that you do that goes along with that prior to the internship. Yeah. And that process meant that my lecturer at the time really wanted me to learn from teachers in prestigious Sydney schools for my internship.
Right.
Which I could understand, but at the same time I was a country kid that had moved 8 hours from home for an education, which meant that financially it was pretty tough.
Yep.
And also I was so far from home, and I knew that a lot of people, when they go through the internship, are offered a job out of that, you know, that
right.
especially for teachers.
Yeah.
So it was really important to me that I didn't do it's nearly 3 months worth of teaching for free in Sydney,
right.
because to start with it was going to be hard to afford it because I wouldn't be able to work while I did that.
Yep.
And also it wasn't going to teach me the challenges that I would face once I got home to be a teacher.
Yep. Yep.
It wasn't going to help me to learn classroom behaviour, dealing with country kids, Aboriginal kids in the country, and I wanted to learn from a teacher who was already doing that successfully.
Right.
It was really important to me. So I was told I wasn't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And I was told if I really wanted to teach Aboriginal kids that maybe I should just go and teach in Redfern.
Right, yes.
And I said, well, that's not really good enough for me.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a meeting with Kim.
Right.
And I told Kim what I really wanted to do, and this is why. And from that moment, she said, well, I think that's if that's the choice that you want to make, I will support you, and we just will make it work. You'll get back for the internship meetings. You know, it is 7 or 8 hours, but I was used to doing that anyway because that was home all through uni. So off I went, and I did my internship at Coonamble High, and I did it really well. It was a great experience.
Right.
And my projects that I was able to teach were local culture in a local school, and how to control a classroom when they're near climbing the walls, and it was really good. It was really important to me to do that, and it was really great for me to have that support in the end. So it was an interesting time, and it shaped a lot of things for me for the future.
Now, some of what you've said has sort of formed another question in my mind, and I'd possibly like you to comment on what I'm going to say. I think a lot of our people are conditioned to believe, or maybe it's easy to believe, that we remain at the bottom of the ladder, bottom of the rung of the ladder. And they're more or less elect to dwell on past injustices rather than to do something about lifting themselves out of the big hole in which we've fallen. And I think Oprah Winfrey makes a really interesting comment. She says, and I'd like you to comment on it. She says, I don't think of myself as a poor little ghetto girl who made good. I think of myself as someone who from an early age knew I was responsible for myself and I had to make good. How do you relate that to our people?
I think, well, for myself, at an early age, I knew that I had to just go out and do what I wanted to do. It wasn't going to fall in my lap.
That's right. Yeah.
And my parents are responsible for that. They're great believers in doing what you love to do and believing in me that I could go and achieve that.
Yeah.
So I think Oprah Winfrey is onto something there. Yeah. It's
and
it's not thinking about where you come from or if it's bad or good. It's making sure that whatever you have for your future is the best that you can make it to be.
Yeah. And we saw that on a daily basis in the schools. But anyway, I've made you suffer for too long. Thank you for talking to us today, and thank you for your contribution to this project.
Thank you.